I'm Whitley Strieber, and I have returned to speaking in public after many years because I have been now involved with this experience and the visitors for over 30 years and for most of my life. And if what happened in my childhood really happened as I remember it, then for all of my life. I have come to a point of understanding of this that I think is pretty unusual in the sense that I don't know of anyone else who has been as involved in this as long as I have. And what I want to do is basically to communicate what I've found. I've written a new book called Supernatural, 2 words, A New Vision of the Unexplained, with Professor Jeffrey Kripal from Rice University. And in it, we alternate chapters. I describe experiences, and then he interprets them from an academic viewpoint. And the book is, I think one of the reviewers called it the most important book on the paranormal in 40 years. And certainly it's an important book for me because it's a culmination of a lifetime of strange experiences. But what is happening? That's the question. We always have answers. And if you look closely at this, you find that it has precedent throughout our history. These events have been reported in different forms. Dr. Jacques Vallée, in his groundbreaking book, Passport to Magonia, gave us a brilliant look into the way this affects us over history and has affected us over history. So, is it really alien contact? We don't know. And the public doesn't like that. They don't like people to say, we don't know. They find that annoying. They want to know. They want something to either believe or disbelieve. Yes or no, keep it simple. It's not simple. And yes or no is not going to get us anywhere. Belief isn't going to get us anywhere. As Jeff says in Supernatural, it's time to make the cut for the scientific community to make a cut with the assumptions by which it lives in relation to this. Not to therefore say, well, it must be UFOs from another planet, but to say that it is a genuine human mystery, which it is, and can be studied physically, anthropologically, socially, in the social sciences. It can be studied in many different ways. And scientists will dismiss it as anecdotal. That means a unique data point, nothing else like it. But that's not true in this case. It's not anecdotal. There are millions of people who have this experience, millions of them. And they are being told, each one individually, it's just you woke up in the middle of the night, maybe you had something strange to eat, go home. That's no answer. There is a big mystery here. But the first place to look is not to the skies, it's to us. We must look into ourselves to find out what our reaction to this mystery means. Meanwhile, academically, in the community that Jeff Kripal inhabits, which is a community of religious scholars and mythologists and people like that, it's necessary to readdress this whole phenomenon as the core human experience that it is. This is essential. In terms of my own work, what I'm doing has to do with looking at this as something that can enrich a person's life or otherwise. In other words, many people have experiences that they find very difficult and very frightening. Many people have experiences that are not that way. I've had both. I've had the worst they have this has to deal out, aside, I suppose, from being just outright killed. And the best, I have been in a school that has led me over 30 years to an extraordinary place, in my opinion. This place is at the edge of a bridge between our lives and the lives of what we call the dead. It's not what you would think, that finally, oh, he's finally got blueprints for a flying saucer. Not at all. This is not about that, on at least not in the surfaces in which I address it. It's about us. My wife, Anne, who died last August, in August of 2016, was an incredibly brilliant woman and a deeply conscious human being. We got, after Communion was published in 1987, we got hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions, a million letters, quite possibly over the next few years. She read these letters, all of them, and the letters are now being collected. The ones we have about 30,000 of them still. They are being collected by a university, so they won't be lost, I'm happy to say. In any case, in reading these letters, she said a fascinating thing. She said, you know, Whitley, this has something to do with what we call death. And there was story after story in the letters from people who would have close encounters with aliens and also with the dead. And then that began to happen at our cabin in upstate New York. We had, for example, a situation where in the living room, sleeping, or they weren't sleeping, no one slept in that cabin except me and my wife and my son. Everyone else was always awake all night when they came. Anne had an extraordinary ability to choose the people the visitors would respond to. And so we had a group of such people in the cabin, 4 of them sleeping upstairs in the living room, 2 of them in a private context, a couple in the basement. The 4 people in the living room encountered what I call kobolds, the little dark blue figures, which began leaping around in the living room in the middle of the night. And they could see them and hear them, and they could talk to each other, but they couldn't move. They were all paralyzed. There was a magazine editor there who had promised that if he saw them, he would make it a big story in his magazine. That's why they came. Meanwhile, in the basement, the couple woke up to find a friend who had died in an earthquake 3 years before, standing at the foot of the bed, big as life. And she said, I want you to know I'm all right. That was typical. So what is this? It doesn't sound like aliens from a flying saucer come down to test us and see what we're like and probe around. This is a big universe, and there may be some of that going on, but there's more. And the more is what interests me. The more is about us, who we are, where we are, and why we are here. I seek answers. That's what I'm doing and why I'm back. I've thought a lot about what their basic reality is, what the visitor's basic reality is. I meditated for a long time, probably a year or more, with a group of people who could materialize to an extent, who claimed to be from between lives. They were in another level of reality. And when one of them was material, you could touch him. Very, very light physically, but had a human feel and smell, but then also appeared in 2 other forms. They used to appear as 7 globes of light floating through our woods. And in the last night I saw him, we had lost our cabin and we lost everything, because you talk too much about this stuff and people stop coming. They stop reading your books. You become a laughingstock, which is what happened to me. And so we lost everything. We went bankrupt. But the last night of that time we spent with those people, he came out into the front yard from the meditation room, floating as the most beautiful little like star you could imagine, with these rays shining off of it that were not, they were like laser beams, and they touched me, my skin, and penetrated. I could feel them, and it was like having the essence of another person touching you, not like a finger, but like something much deeper. It was a wonderful, brilliant experience. And then the next morning, we left forever. We've never been back. Where do they come from? They certainly inhabit both what we call the world of the living and what we call the world of the dead. And that's what I think we can do. There is we call it the veil between the worlds. It's not a veil. For most of us, it's a brick wall. We can raise that wall. We can get that wall down and become a bigger species. There is reality beyond the physical. We are being told, the scientific and intellectual communities in the media are screaming at us, you're only a body. You're only a meat puppet. Buy more cars. Eat more hot dogs. Live in the physical and ignore everything else. You don't matter at all. You are small, insignificant, and worthless, essentially, is what they're saying. I say no. I say you are large, you are highly significant, and you have inestimable value because you are building what could potentially be an immortal being. I guess I'm out here looking to help people become immortal beings, to bridge that gap between the worlds, to engage with the other side. I'm engaged with my wife. I'm still married. That's Anne, and this is me. Old marriage was until death do us part. New marriage is as we abide. I'm about the new, about recognizing the true richness of every human being, the potential that's there. You know, I asked Anne, I've talked to Anne a lot since she died. Other people have too, and Anne was a teacher in her life. And in her afterlife, she's an even better teacher. I asked her, what happens to the evil? What happens to bad people when they die? And her answer was extraordinary. I expected some kind of explanation of what really, long explanation. She simply said, nothing. Nothing. I don't think we want that. I think that you give up a lot in this life if you're not compassionate and loving, and above all, the three things: compassion, love, and treating every person as equal and equal to you. You do that, you enrich your soul. You don't, I think you're kind of like a little piece of dust that sort of blows away on the winds, and who knows what happens.